Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to sit down and do the end of year book tag, which is just some questions about what you're planning to do with the rest of the year's reading, some TBR related questions, which I thought would be kind of a good way to sum up the vibes of the year thus far and what I'm kind of aiming to use the remaining weeks of the year for. So I saw Faye do this recently. I'll put a link to her version of the tag in the description as well. So yeah, let's get into the questions and chat a little bit about the end of the year plans. Of course I put the phone out of reach. Okay, so the first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? There are several. I think that probably 30% of my TBR, physical TBR, are books that I have started at some point or another and just put back on the shelves. Some of them I've read maybe a few pages from, some of them I've gotten a good portion of the way into them, and for various reasons I didn't finish them and put them back on the shelves. All of these are books that I actually want to read, not books that I've DNF'd, because those I get rid of regularly. But this year, a few books that I am still currently reading and that I want to finish by the end of the year. So first of all, the ones that I'm just actively reading at the moment, like I am currently listening to Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and I'm listening to this on audio. It's so good. It's so much fun, and I will definitely be finishing this one off like in the next few days because it's been a very quick listen. I'm also reading an ebook of The Blå Garnet by Karin Erlandsson. This is a book about knitting history. It's both a personal sort of anecdotes of various things that she's learned as a knitter, but also reflections on the history of knitting and in various ways. Like, it talks about different techniques, it talks about different purpose that knitting has had in different communities. It's so good, so much information that I've been writing down in my Hobonichi, which I'm kind of using as a commonplacing thing combined with a journal, very much inspired by Megan Rhiannon. I have also just started In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and this one is also really good so far. It's a memoir told in vignette form, I think I would say, and or flash nonfiction. I don't know exactly what to describe the construction of this, but it's really good so far. I'm only fifth of the way into this, I think, but I have also just started this one. So those are the books that I'm actively reading at the moment. I am also doing a reread through the Sherlock Holmes books. So I have finished A Study in Scarlet and The Sign of the Four, and am planning to start The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes soon. I am not hoping to reread all of the Sherlock Holmes books before the end of the year, and actually I haven't read the last few in the series, the last few short story collections, but I want to continue on with my reread of the series. And then one book that I've been kind of neglecting for a while and that I want to eventually finish off because I started this one several months ago, that is Islands of Abandonment by Cal Flynn, which I have done a bit of a loose buddy read with Nicole Miles, and we started this one, I want to say sometime during the summer, and I only have 3 chapters, I think, left of this, so I just kind of need to sit down with it. 2 chapters left of this, so I just need to sit down and prioritize this, but I will definitely want to finish this one off before the end of the year. The second question is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? So the first book that comes to mind for this is Lord of the Rings. I really want to reread the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's been kind of a plan that I've had in the back of my mind throughout the year. Initially I planned to do it last autumn with the new audiobook version narrated by his name is escaping me at the moment. I will put it on the screen. But I really wanted to reread the trilogy using the newly narrated audiobook versions. And I never got around to... I think I started listening to the first audiobook, and then I just got sidetracked, as I often do. And then I've had it in the back of my mind the entire year, and autumn winter season is for me very much associated with the Lord of the Rings. Even though there's definitely summer seasons in the books, they are associated with autumn for me, and I have often read something by Tolkien during the Christmas season, so I think these would be perfect for the autumnal transition into winter. And I do really want to get to that. So we'll see if I put a pause on my Sherlock Holmes audiobook listening and move on to this in the near future, or if I read the physical books, because I do own those as well. So that is an option. I also have very recently bought 4 books that I would consider works perfectly for this autumnal transition thing. So one of them is called Spindelbjörken by Per Hansson. This is a book that has been nominated for the August Prize in Sweden this year, and it's about a man who goes back to his hometown where he grew up, and there's some kind of conflict, some kind of clash between his current life and his origin, sort of how he confronts memories of nostalgia and what he left behind when he moved away and started a new life of his own. And I think he brings his current family with him, so his wife and his kids, to this place of his childhood home. And I think there's, as I said, some kind of conflict there. And from what I can tell from the synopsis, he is sort of craving this connection with nature. And nature writing is something I definitely associated with autumn, but there's also something about, I think this is set in the northern parts of Sweden, in Norrland. And Norrland has wintry weather most of the year, so I think this would be perfect for an autumn-winter read. And I also really want to read this in the near future because it is currently nominated for the prize. And it is the one that I was most interested in from all of the nominations this year. Then we have 3 illustrated books that I definitely want to read before the end of the year, and that I think would work well for this this seasonal transition. So we have The Legends of Norse Mythology, Enter a World of Gods, Giants, Monsters, and Heroes. This is such a beautiful cover, and it is written by Tom Birkett and illustrated by Isabella Mazzanti, and she's actually the reason that I heard about this and that I wanted to pick this one up, because I absolutely love her illustrations. She's one of my favorite illustrators, and you can already see from the cover, but she just has a magical way of doing illustrations. And this is a collection, like a lot of other books of its kind. It is basically an encyclopedia of mythologies, illustrated beautifully and written for a modern audience. And I think both the sense of mythology is definitely something that I associate with the end of the year and sort of spending more time inside and with company, and there's something about that telling stories around a fire aspect of mythology that I associate with this time of year. Also sort of fairy tales and storytelling in general. And I'm really interested to learn more about a more local mythology, because a lot of the time when I've read about mythology has been from other countries, other continents even. But I am quite unfamiliar with a lot of the Norse mythology, so I think it will be educational and fun for me to learn about the Nordic stories of origin, and also to see the beautiful illustrations by Isabella. So by Isabella Mazzanti. So I'm very much looking forward to this one. And then we have a book that I've planned to read in December, because I think it is meant to be a Advent book. It's called Hemligheten I Helmersbruk by Eva Frans and by Elin Sandström. I think she's probably the illustrator of this. So from what I can tell from the synopsis, it's about this girl who moves with her, or who travels with her mom to a coastal city called Helmersbruk, and they rent a cottage that is kind of located next to a haunted mansion. That is the impression I'm getting from the synopsis. So it's a gothic mystery story with Christmas, with a Christmas setting, or leading up to Christmas. So I really like the idea of an Advent book, reading one chapter a day leading up to Christmas. And then lastly, for my transitional books, I have Trollvinter by Tove Jansson, and I don't remember what this one is called in English, but it definitely has an English translation. It's one of the Moomin books, as you can tell from the cover, and it's a new edition which includes some illustrations in color, which apparently only existed in the Italian edition of all things before. So it obviously has all of the black and white illustrations like this, but also things like this. So it is one of the Moomin books that's set in winter, and I haven't read this one, so I'm looking forward to filling up some of the gaps in my Tove Jansson reading. The third question is there a new release you are still waiting for? To be honest, I don't think there are, because the one that I had still been waiting for just came out. It is The Vulnerables by Sigrid Nunes. I don't really know what this one is about, but the reason I'm interested is because I enjoyed The Friend by her a lot, and I also enjoyed the one that came after, What Are You Doing With Your Life, or something like that is the title. I didn't enjoy that one as much as The Friend, but I still enjoyed it. So I'm interested to read more Sigrid Nunes in general, and this one just came out, like I said. There are a few other new releases that has just come out in the beginning of November or end of October that I haven't had a chance to pick up yet. But I don't think there's any more that hasn't been released yet this year that I am waiting for. However, there is one that is coming out next year that I am already so excited for, and that is Dispersals by Jessica J. Lee, who is the author of Two Trees Make a Forest and Turning. Both nonfiction books, both are nature writing related, and I absolutely love both of them. I think there's something about Jessica J. Lee's way of writing about nature that has really connected with me, and that has stuck with me since I read them, and I have kind of wanted to reread them as well, which I might do for December. We'll see. I'll get back to that later. Since reading the books that I mentioned, I followed her on Instagram, and so I've been seeing all of her updates about this book coming out next year, and I'm already, like I said, very much anticipating it. But that's next year, so I don't think I have anything for this year. Okay, the next question is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? To be honest, there are a lot of books that I would love to read, and it's difficult to pinpoint 3 that I want to read more than any other books that I have yet to read, but I've chosen 3 based on this current sense that they are more prioritized. We'll see if that holds up in reality. So the one I think that is of highest priority of these and of all books that I have is The Sundial by Shirley Jackson, because it is the only novel of hers that I haven't yet read. I want to do a rereading project with her next year, and by that point I want to have read all of the books, so I think it would be nice to get to this one now so that there's some time before I reread it eventually next year. But like I said, it is the last of the Shirley Jackson novels I've yet to read. I don't know what this one is about, but I'm expecting it to be dramatic and gothic. So it says, Mrs. Halloran has inherited the great Halloran house on the death of her son, much to the disgust of her daughter-in-law. the delight of her wicked granddaughter, and the confusion of the rest of the household. But when the original owner, long dead, arrives to announce the world is ending and only the house and its occupants will be saved, they find themselves in a nightmare of strange marble statues, mysterious guests, and the beautiful, unsettling Halloran sundial, which seems to be the center of it all. So, I mean, it would be perfect to read this in December, since December is Shirley Jackson's birthday month, and mine as well. So it would be nice to have this one saved for that time. And then 2 books that I would also love to read this year. We have Women Running in the Mountains by Yuko Tsushima, and it is translated by someone whose name is unclear. Geraldine Harcourt. I have wanted to read this one since I read her other book that I can't remember the name of at the moment, but she is the daughter of Osamu Dazai, who is one of my favorite writers of all time, and I read the other one of her books in 2018 or 19. And since then I wanted to read more of her books. This one I've had my eye on the entire year and probably more than that. And I've been close to buying it so many times, and I very recently caved in and bought it. So I've only had it on my shelves for maybe 2-3 weeks, and therefore I would really love to get to it finally now that I have it in my hands. But it is about a woman who has a single parent household, I think, and I think it's about her experience of being a mother. So it says, alone at dawn, in the heat of midsummer, a young woman named Takiko Odaka departs on foot for the hospital to give birth to a baby boy. Her pregnancy, the result of a brief affair with a married man, is a source of sorrow and shame to her abusive parents. For Takiko, however, it is a cause for reverie. Her baby, she imagines, will be hers and hers alone, a challenge that she also hopes will free her. Takiko's first years as a mother is filled with the intense bodily pleasures and pains that comes from caring for a newborn. At first she seeks refuge in the company of other women in the hospital, in her son's nursery, but as the baby grows, her life becomes less circumscribed as she explores Tokyo, then ventures beyond the city into the countryside, toward a mountain that captures her imagination and desire for a wilder freedom. So it definitely sounds fantastic. And then again, one that I bought very recently is The Other Name by Jon Fosse. So this is the first part in his septology. I bought this one very recently because he won the Nobel Prize for Literature this year, and I've been meaning to read these books for a long time because they were also nominated for the International Booker a few years ago, and I tried one of them in English and couldn't get on with it. And I think also I didn't read the first one. I read a later part in the series, and I felt very at sea, like I wasn't grounded in his way of writing or in this world that he had created. So I had been meaning to try in Swedish and from the beginning, and already from reading a sample of this I could sense that this would be the type of book I would need to be in the right mood for, in the right mindset, because he barely uses any punctuation. It's very stream of consciousness, jumps from one thing to another, and if you are not in the mood to be that free flow, then it will be frustrating. And I think when I'd previously tried this, I was not in the mood for that at all, so I found it very frustrating, and I couldn't really grab onto anything. So I think reading the sample, I could see potential in enjoying this if I was in the right mood. And from reading interviews with him, I'm very interested in his approach to writing and to literature, so I still definitely want to read these and to experience them fully, just sort of letting go of the sense of control that I think I sometimes have as a reader, and that is can be a hindrance in reading these types of books, and I think that is the reason I still haven't gotten to Dr. Report, which I still really want to read and that I could easily put on this list as well. But yeah, we'll try to get to this one maybe for the Christmas holiday when I have some weeks off from work. The next question is there a book you think could still shock you and become a favorite of the year? So the current favorite of the year so far is Ace by Angela Chen, and I think if there's any book that could possibly beat that, it's probably going to be Refusing Compulsory Asexuality, A Black Asexual Lens on Our Sex-Obsessed Culture by Sharonda J. Brown, because it covers the same territory, but I think it will have some different angles. Especially what I'm sensing is that this is going to be a very intersectional, kind of more academic leaning maybe, perspective on asexuality and how it's viewed in society, how it's connected with various other conversations regarding sexuality and consent and happiness and family dynamics and relationships. There's so many other things that was discussed in Ace that I think will be continued on with this one in maybe some new angles. And I feel like Ace was so important for me that the only other book that could possibly challenge its spot on the top one is this one. We'll see. It might have a shared spot, but I have a good feeling about this, so definitely want to get to this one before the end of the year and see if it can make the top. And then the other only book, and then another book that I think could become a favorite based on the combination of things that it covers is Some of Us Just Fall on Nature and Not Getting Better by Polly Atkin. I mentioned recently that I've been trying to read more writing on chronic illness, and I always love nature writing, and I think this book combines those two things. So let's see. After years of unexplained health problems, Polly Atkin's perception of her body was rendered fluid and disjointed. When she was finally diagnosed with 2 chronic conditions in her 30s, she began to piece together what had been happening to her, all her misdiagnoses, the fractures, the dislocations, the bone-crushing exhaustion, the not being believed. Some of Us Just Fall combines memoir, pathography, and nature writing to trace a fascinating journey through illness, a journey which led Polly to her current home in the Lake District, where outdoor swimming is purported to cure all, and where every day she turns to the natural world to help tame her illness. And like I said, the combination of writing on chronic illness, which is something, as I said, that I want to read more of and that I feel, again, very has been very important to me in my reading this year and made me think in new ways about pain, about bodies, sort of the physical aspect of bodies, and of this combination of nature writing and how nature writing is expanding constantly and getting more perspectives in there, and how we connect to the natural world in so many different rich ways. I feel like this will be just hitting the bullseye in terms of what it covers and the way that it interweaves various things that I'm interested in. Okay, the last question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? So I have started to think about my reading goals for 2024, and I think they will end up looking quite similar to this year's. So one of them is definitely going to be read more books in Swedish or read more Swedish literature, which is something I've been working very actively on doing this year, and that I think has made a huge difference for me in terms of I feel much more connected to the Swedish literature, seeing the current one and historically as well, because I do want to read more classics as well. I feel like it improves my Swedish language skills, which is important to me to continue to evolve, because I think obviously I am bilingual, so I have sometimes felt like my Swedish is sort of lacking because of the fact that I don't consume writing or any other media in this active way in Swedish. So that is something that I've been doing a lot this year that has been really fun and that I definitely want to continue on doing. One of the things that I've done this year is to try to read every third book in Swedish, and that is probably how I'm gonna approach it next year as well, to create at least a third, but hopefully about half of my reading will be eventually in Swedish, which doesn't have to mean half of my books are originally in Swedish. It could mean that I read in translations into Swedish as well, because I do want to read from other Nordic languages in Swedish translation. But that is gonna be a goal for next year for sure. And then the other ones that I'm thinking about is book buying things, which I need to get a hold of. Not because of different reasons as it usually is. Money saving is of course a constant thing in the back of my mind, but also there's a limit to the space, the storage that I have, and I'm constantly on the verge of not having space for my books, which means that they end up being stored in various places, and I don't like the feeling of the scatteredness of that. So I do want to be able to fit all of my books in my bookshelves, and I also want to use some of my bookshelves for storage for crafting. So I want to decrease the amount of books I own in general, both the read and the unread. So for that to happen, I need to buy less books. But I also want to do other things next year, which I think I just need to buy less. I want to use my library much more actively, which I feel like is a very freeing sensation, and it is easier to do when I haven't been burying myself in new books. I feel like it makes me feel more scattered than I necessarily want to. I also, one of the things that I'm thinking of for next year is I want to reread more, and this is again a goal that I've had in past years, and it's one of the things that I haven't done much this year, I feel like. I've reread a few books like I usually do, but I would like to make it a much more central part of my reading year. And in December there is a readathon that is called Remember December, I want to say. Yeah, I will put a link to one of the announcements in the description, which is you are encouraged to reread books in December with them. And that is definitely something I want to do, and I will probably make a TBR for that later on, closer to December. So I think that will be nice, that I will kind of kick off my rereading in December and then move in that direction in the next year. And I feel like the way that I encourage myself to do this is to not have too many unread books, too many new books that I feel like I have to prioritize. So the book buying thing, I haven't decided on the rules for that, if I can make a fun game thing of it, or if I'm just going to give myself some limits. I know that when I create limits, I end up wanting to break them even more, so we'll see. But I have to figure something out there, so that is kind of the way I'm thinking for next year, are those three areas: to read more in Swedish, to figure out my book buying situation, and to reread more. Possibly there's going to be something else, but I will talk more about that in my usual revisit of my reading goals and my look ahead for next year later on in the next few weeks. So that was all for the end of the year book tag. Hope you are having a fantastic November so far. Have you made this tag? And if so, I would love to see it. So do let me know in the comments. If you want to share some of the answers to these questions in the comments, I would also be very curious to hear about the books you would like to fit into the end of the year. Are you still waiting for any releases still? I feel like there's barely any releases that I know of even that comes out this late in the year, maybe in November, but definitely not in December. But I would be very interested if you still are waiting for any releases yet, that has yet to come out. If there's any particular books that you really want to fit into the year, or any that you think will become new favorites. I'd be very much interested to hear about that. And yeah, I think that was all I wanted to say. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.